First, we want to just thank our officers tonight for taking a gun off the street, for doing their job, for doing it in a professional manner that we expect, using the proper police tactics to apprehend a known dangerous person in this community. And I think it's crucial to highlight this individual just was placed on probation for possession of a gun in December. January, he's back in possession of a gun. Something is wrong with that. We are making tactical errors on preventing the law enforcement communities from being able to rid our communities of guns. That's unacceptable. There is a clear signal on the streets that it is all right to carry a gun in the city of New York. He was arrested at 14 years old for being in possession of a gun. At 16, he's arrested again, and this time he discharged the gun. What is it going to take? What is it going to take before we finally realize that we are endangering the lives of children by allowing children to carry guns that they are using on children? I am just frustrated with this. We are putting our communities in harm's way. We're putting our police officers in harm's way, and we don't seem to get it. It is unacceptable to be in possession of a gun in the city of New York. Yet there's signal on the street that it is acceptable. I want to take my hat off to these officers. They showed a great level of restraint, able to apprehend a person who was arrested for having a gun before. And they were able to apprehend him without taking the life of a person. My police commissioner is putting all the methodologies that are needed, all of the police personnel on the ground, coordinating with the right plan. But there's one thing we need. We need help. We need help. We need our lawmakers to look at this and the overproliferation of guns in our community. We need them to look at the energy that's out there that say it's okay to carry a gun. And then when we make good arrests like this, we need to make sure they're prosecuted. And I want to thank DA Clark for understanding how important this is. We need the entire team on board to keep our city safe. We should not be in this hospital right now thanking God that that officer is alive. It's unacceptable. And so I thank this precinct. I thank the men and women who are out on patrol tonight and made the decision to put themselves in harm's way to keep the people of this city safe. One officer shot is one officer too many. One civilian shot is one civilian too many. Our city must be safe. That's the promise I made, and that's the promise I'm going to keep. And we're going to utilize our agency to carry this out. But we do need help to bring this city back to a safe city. I want to turn it over to the police commissioner. But again, we want to thank our police officers for the job they did tonight. And visiting that officer, lying in that bed, a gunshot wound to his leg. Just a few weeks ago, visiting an officer who was shot in the head. Earlier today, visiting the family of a 19-year-old baby that was shot in Burger King. This can't continue. Commissioner.
Good evening. We stand here once again to address you, mindful of how fortunate we are yet again. Our officers are going to be okay. Tonight at approximately 9:30 p.m., officers assigned to the 4-8 Precinct Public Safety Team were patrolling the area of Laurelard Place and East 187th Street. There were a total of 6 police officers in 2 unmarked police vehicles who were all in uniform. As the officers approached the corner of Laurelard Place and East 187th Street, they parked their vehicles and walked to 2356 Laurelard Place to address a large disorderly group of individuals at the location. Upon the officers' arrival, the individuals came out to the sidewalk. As the officers approached one of the men, he failed to comply with the officer's orders to remove his hands from his pockets. After several attempts to have the individual comply, he began to physically struggle with the officers. At this point, there was a single round fired from the suspect's firearm that struck the suspect in his left groin area and then exited the suspect and struck the officer in the right leg. The officer and suspect were transported to this hospital by police vehicles, both with non-life-threatening injuries. I have watched the officers' body-worn cameras and their firearms have been inspected. At no time did any officer fire their weapons. The perpetrator is a 16-year-old criminal group member, and our officer who was injured is a 4-year veteran. Tonight is yet another example of how quickly incidents can escalate and how our officers risk their lives to keep this city safe. I've been privileged to lead the NYPD for 18 days, and it is the second time I've had to come to the hospital for an officer shot. It underscores that there are too many illegal guns on the streets of New York City, and all too often, those who are carrying them are young. A tragic issue the NYPD, alongside the mayor, is tackling head-on. I want to thank Dr. Patty and the incredible medical staff at St. Barnabas Hospital for their work, and I'm going to turn it over to the Chief of Detectives, James Essick, for details.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Mayor. Just like to give a brief overview of the investigation where we stand before I take questions. So at approximately 9:31 last night, in front of 2356 Laurelard Place, a location known to us as a problematic block with drugs, gangs, and disorderly groups. Two PD vehicles consisting of 6 public safety officers approach of a group of at least 7 individuals. As they approach, one male steps towards a white auto parked in front of. As he moves towards the car, he puts his hands in his pockets and repeated commands to show his hands are ignored. A struggle ensues and one shot is fired. The perpetrator is struck in the left groin. A bullet travels through and strikes our officer in his right leg below the knee. Recovered at the scene is one deformed bullet, one 9mm Sig Sauer. That gun is stolen from York County, South Carolina on October 17th of 2020. The perpetrator in this is a male 16 years old. He's a Railway criminal group member, which is a subset of the Crips. He was arrested on May of 2020 nearby on U Street in possession of a tourist firearm. He was charged as a juvenile delinquent and received probation starting in December of 21, and it ends in May of this year, 2022. That arrest was made by the same public safety team, who not part of these 6 individuals, but the same public safety team in the 4-8 who did that. So before we take questions, I'd like to turn it over to the PBA President, Pat Lynch.
Thank you, Chief, Commissioner, Mayor. You know, what we saw tonight is both the problem and the solution. The problem, a person that's carrying a weapon that should have been paying the consequences for being arrested once, but nonetheless was out in the street and carried again, and now we have a police officer here in the street. The solution, police officers putting themselves in harm's way to take that gun off the street and then getting shot. So as a collective, we have an opportunity here to solve the problem that we see right in front of us, common sense. Let's make the laws where there's consequences for carrying a gun. Let's give the prosecutors what they need so they can go before the judge and solve this problem. The police officers, the tools that we need to do this job. It can be done, but that collective doesn't just mean all of us up here. It means all of you out on your couches, at your work, riding the subway. We need you to demand that we get these laws that we need to do the job. We've been here before. We all started today in St. Patrick's Cathedral, where we were there memorializing a hero police officer, Stephen McDonald, who was shot 30-some years ago, was paralyzed for 30 years before he died of those line-of-duty injuries. Back then, we learned a lesson, and we said this can't happen, and we changed it, and we took our streets back. Well, let's remember that lesson. Let's remember that hero, and let's change the things we need to change and move together as a collective.
Mr. Mayor, particularly in the Bronx, over the past year, we've seen 16 and 17-year-olds arrested with guns. And as the police can take people out of operation, you can make arrests, take that individual off the street and confiscate the gun. When they get into the courts, those cases are diverted usually to family court or youth court under the state's bail reform law. And it leads to the same outcome, where you see the juvenile offender go back to the same neighborhood or the same set of circumstances that has fostered that predilection for carrying guns. How do you solve for that without the help of the state legislature?
It's a real challenge without the help of lawmakers in Albany. And the goal is to tweak the law in the right places. Anytime there's a gun involved, we have to look at that in a serious fashion, and now we're not doing that. That is the focus area, the gun. And we can't treat gun crimes as any ordinary crime. The theme that the gun must be exposed is the wrong direction. Other parts of raise the age we must look at. I believe now is an opportunity based on the data that we have recovered and based on the incidents to sit down and have an intelligent conversation of how do we keep our city safe. If the goal is to protect young people, then we need to be protecting the young people who are the victims of these levels of violence. Because if we don't, we're just going to continue to have the faucet running, and the officers are on the street with their cups running over with gun violence.
A follow-up to that, you mentioned that this individual was a member of the Railway crew.
Yes, the Railway crew. It's a subset of the Crips.
And is this part of a larger dispute in the confines of 484-6 between Railway and guns?
Yes, you're going back to last summer. Railway, Third Side, Sev Side, Crip sets fighting the Bloods in the Bronx. I think we had, if you recall, during the summer, late last year, 3 homicides of young individuals, 13-year-old, 16-year-old, 19-year-old, all part of this ongoing violence up there.
Any other questions? Can we show a picture of the gun, Chief? Can you step on over? Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hold the gun up again, someone asked you.